Hi folks, and welcome into another edition of This Week in Pearl, where today we are going to go under the dome with a very special guest from the House of Representatives. Our very own Speaker of the House, Mr. Jason White, is here today to talk about everything that's been going on with this past legislative session and the one last year, his first 2 years as the Speaker of the House. Looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great eye-opening experience. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mayor Windham, and I'm thrilled to show you the city creating its own future. Pearl is located in Rankin County, the fastest growing county in Mississippi, and there's no question why. Access to great schools, even better shopping, and unbridled beauty make Pearl a town that truly embodies its name. And with a truly exceptional team of first responders, public safety is another key component of our success. With fantastic housing opportunities from quaint suburban neighborhoods to gorgeous lakefront properties, there's a place for you here in Pearl. You can't beat the location. Right outside of Pearl is the crossroads of the South, where Interstate 20 meets Interstate 55. From here you can travel anywhere within the state or the country. Or you can choose to stay right here in Pearl or experience the small town atmosphere, community pride, and heart of the local residents.
Hello, folks, and welcome back into this edition of This Week in Pearl, where we're going under the dome with a special guest that our own Representative Gene Newman has brought in today. It is the Speaker of the House, Mr. Jason White. Welcome.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
So glad to have you. Thank you,
morning.
Representative Newman, for bringing him in.
I'm glad to bring him in. He is our leader in the House, and he has a lot of things going. He stays as busy as you can get.
I bet. I know there's a lot that swirls around that's going on this year. It's been an interesting year so far.
For sure it has.
Yeah.
He gets pulled in 9 different ways every second.
Even when you're not in session.
Even when you're not in session.
Some would say 79 ways. We have 79 Republicans in our caucus.
So you get pulled 79 ways.
Or 78.
Or 70, yeah, you're one of the 79, isn't that right? That's right. That's exactly right. So
his wife's in there too. So
well, she carries more weight probably than the other 78.
She probably does.
She probably does. So anyway, welcome to the show. So glad to have you. You've been a guest on here before.
I have.
But we are glad.
Back.
It's good to be back. Glad to have you. Kind of want to cover a little bit, kind of we were talking before the show, just so people kind of get to know, like I said, Mama and them, and where you come from, and who you are, and who raised you, and that sort of thing. So,
Sure.
So where were you born and raised, and tell me about Mom and Daddy.
Big city of Kosciusko, Mississippi,
Okay.
right in the center of our state. I grew up on a little farm just south of town, there in Kosciusko. My mom taught public school there, English for 35 years. You can't tell it by the way I talk, but she taught English, and my dad worked at Holmes Junior College then for almost 30 years, Holmes Community College now in Goodman. So he commuted to Goodman every day from Kosciusko.
Wow.
He helped run their vocational department, as they used to call it. Now we call it Career Tech and
Sure.
other catchy names. But
Right.
he was on the, when he graduated from Mississippi State Mechanical Engineering, for Lockheed a little bit in Alabama, came back home and joined up with Holmes, the junior college system, spent his career doing that. So that's the world I grew up in, a family of educators. We also farmed usually 400 to 500 acres of cotton and soybeans, and we had cows and hogs and all that good stuff. So I was exposed to a little bit of all of
Did
it
you grow up
growing
4-H?
No, we didn't. There was an active 4-H thing there in the community, but I was very involved in sports, all sports, so that consumed my childhood. What didn't get taken up in chores on the farm. We were driving tractors when we were 10 years old, that sort of thing.
400 acres.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot in the hills. It's not a lot today in the Delta and the way folks do it.
Right.
But for us, it was a lot.
Now you were 9 driving a tractor, 10 years old?
My brother was 13, 14, and we were getting after it.
Wow.
But it's all we knew. It's fun. It was a great childhood and great upbringing for us.
So you went to school where?
Typical small town. I went to Kosciusko Public Schools through the 7th grade, and I went to a little private school in West where I met my wife in the 8th grade called East Holmes Academy, which is no more. So I tell folks all the time as this education, different debates rage at the Capitol on any issue as it relates to education. I tell them all the time, I say, I can tell you the good and bad in both. I went to 7 years to public school and 5 to private, and we can talk about the good and bad in both. And I think there are wins there for everybody.
Right. Played a little baseball.
Played baseball, played all sports, in junior high and high school. But after high school, I signed with Mississippi College and played for Coach Tom Gladney at Mississippi College there. Was a Choctaw. I probably wasn't your typical MC Choctaw getting there, but I loved my experience there. It's been so good for me. Connections I made there all these years later, just seem to keep popping up, meeting fellow Choctaws in different streams of life as it relates specifically to politics. And then after after undergrad, I went to MC's law school, which we laugh about this. Law school's downtown. It's about 2 blocks from the Capitol.
It is.
So for 3 years, I would drive by the Capitol every day going to class. I don't even remember looking out the window at the Capitol and thinking, I wonder what those cats are doing in there.
Right.
I knew what was going on at the Capitol, but not in a way that interested me.
Right.
I was focused on getting back home to Kosciuszko and starting a law practice and starting a family and that sort of thing. But now, fast forward all these years later, and I'm at that Capitol every day, and I wonder, do
you ever just kind of peer down at the law school?
Yeah, we go down there. They have, we actually have a pretty robust set of alumni that are in the legislature, either House or Senate. I even have some classmates that were in my specific class there, and they have us down sometimes on Wednesdays. They call it, I forgot what they call it, luncheon, some kind of legislative luncheon. They have for us down there, and they have other alumni there. It's pretty neat.
So you get to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, I get to hang out a little bit.
So how did you go from being a farmer, educator family to law school?
I don't know. I get that question a lot. My dad, of course, in all of his dealings with land, and he kind of dabbled in the pine timber business too. He started buying and selling land and planting pine trees when that was kind of an new and different thing. We even started planting a lot of our farmland in pine trees, and in all of that process, he had a lot of dealings with one of the local lawyers there in town in Kosciuszko, and those guys were kind of always in the middle of whatever was going on in our community, whether it was, something new, a new industry coming to town, or a development, or there was an issue, there was a problem to be dealt with. Those small town lawyers seemed to kind of always be in the middle of it. And one was a school board attorney, and the city attorney, and the county attorney. And they were community leaders. And so I was kind of always drawn to that a little bit, and wanted to be part of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
All right. So you finish up, move back to West.
Yep. I married a girl on the wrong side of the Big Black River, so I had to step out of Attala County. West sits right on the Big Black River in the northeast corner of Holmes County.
Yep.
And she had her heart set on an old antebellum home there that she grew up in. So anyway, we married after my first year of law school and finished law school down here, and we moved back immediately. And I began law practice there in Kosciuszko and living in the big city of West. And I may have told your viewers this the first time I was on the show, but my first foray into politics was a spot came open on our little board of aldermen in West. I tell everybody we have one of everything in West, including a functioning city government with a mayor and 5 board of aldermen.
The whole deal. Right. Who'd have thought it?
And so a spot came open, and some of my neighbors were like, Jason, you need to run for this. You need to do this.
How old were you then?
I was probably, I was out of law school, so I was probably 25.
I think say 25, 26, somewhere there. All right.
So I run for alderman, and I was like, oh, this is great. I'm looking forward to it. What I didn't factor in is my mother-in-law was the mayor.
Ooh.
So there were some tricky political dynamics right out of the chute for me. And
no kidding.
I tell people.
Wait a minute. So your wife that you married, mother,
is
the mayor of West.
That's correct.
At this time.
That's correct.
Right. Oh my gosh. So,
and I remember at my very first board meeting, after being sworn in and there, they had a public comment period, like most do at the beginning of city and town board meetings. My wife's uncle, the mayor's brother, came to complain about his neighbors' deer dogs who were barking in the pen behind the house, which was keeping their family up. He came in with one of those old flat lay down tape cassette players, put it on the board table, and he had recorded his neighbors' dogs.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought this is what I went to law school and ran for public office for. And you hear folks say it all the time, especially local elected officials. It's all about dogs and ditches.
Yes.
And there's a lot of truth to that in my very first meeting. So fast forward,
right out of the gate.
I'd done that a couple of terms, maybe 3 terms. I'd have to do my math and figure it out. But my predecessor in office in House District 48 was a lady named Mary Ann Stevens, who had served for over 30 years, and she was considered not running again. And she lived in West and good friends with my mother-in-law and a neighbor of my own. But anyway, in those conversations, I started thinking about running for that seat when she wasn't going to run for it. And a lot of my friends were like, "Jason, you're a nice guy. I don't know how you'll fit in at the legislature. That's sharp elbows and kind of rough and tumble down there. It's a different deal." And I'm like, "Look, I negotiated the deal with my mother-in-law as the mayor, and I sat on that board of aldermen
For 12 years.
and I still get to go to all the holidays and family gatherings. I think I can handle the legislature and what it has to offer." So,
Hey, have y'all met my mother-in-law?
anyway, hey, she's tough too. She's tough. She was a great mayor. She was tough.
Yeah.
Is she still mayor?
No, no, she's not. She retired after several terms in office.
Yeah.
But she did a great job for us in our little town.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So then obviously now you transitioned though at some point from being an alderman and then running for representative, but now you're the board attorney.
Yeah, I'm not in West, but in
not-
Kosciusko.
okay, no,
in the
that's
city
right.
of Kosciusko. I'm the city
so-
attorney
so
there.
you-
That's where my law practice is. That's my hometown, and that's the closest big town to West is Kosciusko. So it's kind of the
So
trade
law
center.
practice is there.
That's correct. That's right.
Board attorney for Kosciusko.
That's right.
The city of.
The city of Kosciusko. That's
Still
correct.
doing that to this day.
Still doing that to this day. Yeah.
Can't talk you out of it.
Well, I just enjoy it. You know, it just kind of keeps you connected with the local
Yeah.
community, if nothing else. Now,
I mean, you ain't got anything else
I've
to do,
neglected
like
my law
run
practice
the
some
run the house.
with being elected speaker.
Yeah,
You know, I'm there
right.
at the Capitol almost every day, and so this time of year we do try to catch up with the law office a little bit, but it all seems to fit, and we make it work. And you know, the mayor and board have been good to me to work with me a little bit with my new duties as speaker.
Sure.
But I still, you know, in the world we live in with computers and phones, you're it's
Connected.
like you're there and
Connected
connected
all the
even when
time.
you're not. Yeah.
Right.
But being there with the law practice and as city attorney, you do still stay connected and kind of figure out, you know, your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the community a little bit. Kosciusko and Carthage are the two big towns
Right.
in my legislative district. I
Right.
represent parts of Attala, Carroll, Holmes, and Leake counties. So it's still, I have to stretch out a little bit to get my 24,000
A
people.
lot of rural areas.
Very rural as compared to Jean's is
Right here.
yeah,
Right
right
here.
here. He could probably walk his distance, and mine is almost 55, 60 miles north and south to get all my
Very
folks.
good
And
size.
it's a good cross section of Mississippi though, because you know I've got folks living. You know, I've got single moms in multifamily housing, and what that single mom might expect for her kids and herself from state government is a whole lot different than one of my poultry farmers in Leake County. What he wants out of his
Right.
state government, and it's a little microcosm of what goes on in our
I think that
state.
you
We're
feel like
so diverse.
you've got a good diverse group that have varying ideas
I think
about the
so.
same subject.
Yeah, I've got A-rated school districts in my
Mhm.
legislative district, and I've got F-rated school districts in my legislative district.
And you're right.
It's good for me, you know,
Mhm.
to see and be a part of all that, be in the middle of that.
That makes sense. Okay, so tell me about Mrs. White.
My wife's a family nurse practitioner.
Mhm.
She went to University Medical Center, and when she got out of school, about the same time I did, University Medical Center had opened a clinic in Holmes County, just a family practice clinic. So she went to work for them running that clinic in Durant, which is just south of West, about 9 miles. And they eventually got clinics in Lexington and then in Vaden, right in the edge of Carroll County. So she ran those clinics for them. She is now a state retiree. So when people tell me that I'm insensitive to the PERS issue, I'm like, let me tell you something, dude.
Yeah.
I sleep with a PERS retiree every night. I care about PERS as much as you do.
I can get
or
an
more.
earful from her.
both my parents are PERS,
Right,
you know,
being
retirees.
educators,
And so
sure.
it's personal for me.
Mhm.
And you know, we want to see it. You know,
Yeah.
politicians are hesitant to go there
Yeah.
to that what some used to call the third rail of Mississippi politics,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with PERS retirees, and it is important. It's supremely important, if nothing else. If you just want to look at it from dollars and cents, the economic impact and buying power that so many thousand retirees have in our state and its economy.
Mhm.
If you just look at it that way, much less promises made to employees that have to be kept. That's never been an issue for us. It's just about long-term sustainability and viability.
And the best way to get there.
the best way to get there.
Yeah, it's a big debate every year.
It's a huge debate, but we have to acknowledge it at some point that there is a deficit, and that deficit is growing. And what can we do to stop that, right the ship, and make sure it is stable for folks who are retired and for folks that certainly plan on retiring.
So you have a lot of pillow talk with the wife.
Well, not so much,
Purrs.
but I say all that to say it is personal for me.
Sure. Now tell me about the kids.
We have 3 kids. Our oldest, Sarah Burden, she got married 2 weeks ago. She just finished her first year of medical school here at UNC. She kind of
following mom.
She grew up in that setting and in that clinic, and she thinks that's the kind of medicine she wants to practice is family medicine. We'll see, but she just finished her first year. She was a Bulldog. She went to state for 4 years and then jumped right into med school. And then our middle child is our son, our only son, and he will be a sophomore in class, but he redshirted last year. He's on the Southern Miss football team, so he's off and running. He's a Golden Eagle there in Hattiesburg. And then our baby girl graduated this year from high school, and she will start at Holmes Community College this fall. So we're excited for all 3 of them. We're kind of empty nesters. I don't know what that means these days.
Kind of, right? Because you
My
got
mom
2
says
out of
you
the
never
house.
really get rid of them.
Right. Well, the boys, I had 4, and they were easy to get rid of. They wanted to leave.
But we're awful proud of all 3 of them.
Right.
They've done extremely well.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's been a fun ride with them.
So the oldest one just got married in medical school.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had the wedding in West. I think we tripled the population. There are about 250 of us in West, and we might have doubled or tripled it on wedding day.
Just on wedding day?
Our little church is right next door to our house, so we were
Wow.
all right there.
No
It was a big day in the big city.
That
of
sounds
West.
so fun.
It was fun. It was good.
That sounds so fun. Just
we were
town.
excited when
Yeah.
Suburban said, "Well, we want to get married in West at the church," where she grew up going to church and where we still are. So that was fun and exciting and big day.
Awesome. I think I know a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. All right. So let's get into the special session that you just had, because you guys adjourned with no budget approved or passed. And I think there's a little bit of a story around this that, Gene, you wanted him to share.
I do. I want him to explain why we left without a budget. And it's not just because we just decided we was going to leave. I mean, he made us some promises when we elected him speaker that he wanted things done a certain way, and that's what I'd like him to explain.
Well, you have the floor, sir.
Well, you said there's a story there. There's probably 174 stories, considering the 52 members of the Senate and the 122 members of the House.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was 30,000.
I know. You're right. But I think no matter who tells that story, whether it's from a House perspective, Senate perspective, or Republican or Democrat or independent perspective, for us, and it was anticlimactic leaving regular session without a budget, because we thought, and still feel to this day, with House Bill 1 and the 4 huge sectors of government and our state that it touched, in income tax, grocery tax, fuel tax, and PERS, any of those 4 topics would have been a huge piece of legislation on its own for a session, maybe for a term. And to have all 4 of them in a bill and get it passed and get it signed into law was huge. We checked off several goals that we had for a 4-year term, or maybe even a legislative career in my time as speaker, in one bill. So that was huge. And then to not get a budget, it was a hollow feeling leaving without it. But as Gene was talking about, when I was elected speaker, and this is no shot at former leadership, because again, you're bucking 100 years of tradition. But the way budgets have always been done, our state budget, is we bat some bills back and forth during session, but all of that is really just lip service or just going through the motions. Some of them call them dummy bills, because they'll actually be appropriations bills that are alive, that get passed and voted on, that actually don't even have any money in them. They just have zeros, called dummy bills. But that keeps a bill alive that eventually a budget can be plugged into at some point. And used to that, maybe the thought was, well, we need to wait closer to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So let's wait as late as we can in the session to be sure our monies are coming in the state coffer, so we know what we have to spend, so we can budget correctly. Well, nowadays they can predict that budget within just a few $1 million. And again, we're on track to come June 30th, the end of this month. We're going to be right about what our Joint Legislative Budget Committee predicted and our experts and economists predicted this time last year, as far as what we're going to take in, about $7,600,000,000. So we know that number. And having said that, and the Joint Legislative Budget Committee meeting in the summer and all through the fall to start crafting a budget, it's no need for us to wait till the last weekend of session to all of a sudden, voila, here's our budget. And people don't know what's in it, and you're up there on a deadline day, middle of the night, before midnight hits, hey, we got to vote. Now, you say, well, y'all did it last year, your first year speaker. We did. Let me talk about that just a minute. I had communicated to our Republican caucus and to the House as a whole when I was elected speaker, we're going to not do this anymore. We're going to do it more orderly, have a little more time to really look at it, read the bills before you vote on them on those issues. But you may not remember, but from the 24th session, the House had taken a stand on the MAEP K-12 funding formula. We wanted to
I do remember.
reform that, change that. Let's get a formula that everybody can understand, more transparent, more equitable. The Senate killed that bill 3 times. Wouldn't even give it a committee hearing in the Senate. Eventually, as the politics started to swamp them a little bit, they came around. And all of a sudden, we suspended rules, got up a bill, and hey, all of a sudden they're ready to pass it. Well, in a spirit of let's get along, and that happened the last week of session when all that was going on. I was very upset about not tending to the budget as I had asked them, and the Senate had agreed. It was a gentleman's handshake, but they had agreed we would do it in a much more orderly and earlier in the deal. Well, that hadn't happened. I wanted us to bolt out of there then and say, enough is enough. But not bipartisanship, but just getting along, the fact that they had finally come to the table on that funding formula. I said, all right, we're going to work with you on this budget, but this is the last one we're doing this way. I'm telling you now. So fast forward into this session, when we started in January, communicated that clearly to the Lieutenant Governor and Senate leadership that we are going to work on. Let's not wait till the last 3 or 4 days. Well, they're running around now saying, well, we came down the hall on Tuesday before the Friday deadline. We'd been there almost 90 days. And with 3 days left, they say they're ready to negotiate, which we tried to do it. You couldn't do it in 3 days. We didn't get there. So when that Friday came before the Saturday weekend that everybody makes much, there was lots of belly aching in the Senate about, they're not here to work. They're not here to work. Well, we've been working for 85 days. I don't know, your inability to engage and do a budget is not my emergency. And I had made a commitment to my House members that we weren't going to do it that way. And so I said, what we've always done to buy a little time is extend the session on paper. It doesn't mean we're there any extra days. It just means there's provisions that you can't pass budget bills within so many days of sine die, the day you leave.
Right.
So you just extend it on paper. It doesn't cost the taxpayer any more money. We're not there any extra days, but on paper it's extended to give a little buffer. And I said, y'all can do that. We'll be back on Monday, but we're not going to be up here in the middle of the night voting on bills we hadn't read. Well, they wouldn't agree to that. And again, a lot of that angst on the other end of the building in the Senate goes back to House Bill 1, goes back to the funding formula from the year before. The House was carrying them places they didn't want to go. But the politics were not right for them, so they eventually had to come around. So there was a little hangover from House Bill 1 even, and probably from MAEP rewrite from the year before down there. And then it just kind of culminated in this budget. They're saying, now the House doesn't even want to do the budget. We want to do the budget. We just want to do it in an orderly fashion. Now, what resulted through that special session was a very conservative budget. We didn't think we grew about $90 million on a $7.15 billion budget. Most conservative budget we've had in my time in the legislature, and this is my 14th year. We funded essential services. That took a little time to get there. I hated that we were there in special session and had to do that part quick. But this idea, whether it's from House Democrats or whoever, that nobody knew what was in those bills, those were essentially the bills the House had passed during session.
That's what
the numbers didn't change.
Y'all had passed all of that during session.
The numbers didn't change.
Right.
Now, people didn't get, maybe a little more time to grandstand. And I get it for the Democrats being upset. The bills aren't what they want. They want to fund robustly and grow government, and I'm not mad at them about that. We have a different approach with our Republican caucus. So I'm not surprised or shocked that they're upset. But if you watch that special session when we did get back in session for it to do the budget, they immediately started reading the bills, and that's a constitutional right that every member has to have the bill written. Now that goes back to the days of when our electorate was illiterate, and so a guy was afraid somebody was sneaking something in a bill, so he'd say, "Speaker, I want to have the bill read." But they could listen to every word and be sure there wasn't something that he couldn't read in there. Now it's used as the ultimate. I'm upset, and I'm going to show you I'm upset, so I'm going to hit the stall button by making you read the bills.
It's a filibuster of some sort.
And then they get the chip mark.
And we have our speed reading machine that does it fairly quickly. But our chairman of appropriations, and this is longstanding too in the House, and it's not like something new. If you want to have the bill read and you want to show your angst and you're upset and have the bill read, that's fine. We're not going to read the bill however long it takes to do that, and then have this long, ugly debate on top of it. We'll either debate bills or you can read them if that's what you really want to do. Have it read. But this idea that you're having it read because you don't know what in it, it's just not true. That's not right. You can't hear what it's being said halfway. You got to listen perfectly to even know what it is. It's reading so fast, and nobody's listening when the reading starts. That's simply a stall tactic. So people knew what was in the bills. They just didn't like what was in the bills. That was the reason for their discontent. The ones that had that on the other side of the aisle. I get it. If I had been them, I had rather debated the bills. If I was so right in my positions, I would have wanted to argue them and get my positions out there. Now, the second half of the budget, they actually did that. And we stayed there through the night doing it. But anyway, it makes for...
And then the Senate just ultimately passed your bill.
They did. There was lots of fussing about the House did this, the House did that. The House has adjourned and gone home. We stayed there, worked through midnight to the new legislative day so we could finish ours up. They had adjourned that afternoon about 5 o'clock without any consultation with us, but they don't have to consult with us. They do what they want to do, and we don't have to consult with them. So we passed our bills and sent them back, and they were very upset when they got back that next morning and we were gone, sine die. But we passed all the budget bills. They did a bunch of belly aching and hollering, and then they passed all the bills we sent them. So anyway, I thought it worked out good. It was a conservative budget. I hate the ugliness of it. I hate that part of it. But I don't know how otherwise we would get there when we've said we're not going to do the last minute budgeting anymore. And if they don't believe me before, they believe me now for sure. And Lieutenant Governor's elected statewide. That's his business. The Speaker is elected by the membership, and specifically, even more so, the 79 Republicans of the Republican caucus.
Right.
I work for them, and that folks may be upset by that. They may not like that. I have a duty and an obligation to them, and I made some commitments, and we're going to stick to them.
Well, you were elected by a complete majority.
That's right.
You got all the votes.
I did.
So you work for them. Exactly.
I do. And
there were no dissenters.
There wasn't, but again, that still comes with an obligation to. I'm reminded.
Well, that must mean that everybody, all your colleagues, believe in you and have faith in you.
Yeah, and I need to stick to the things that I committed to them, and that was one of them, a more transparent budgeting process. And I think, and I'm hopeful that next year you will see that a little more methodical, a little sooner, a little more transparent. And
well, hasn't this, and Gene will bring you in on this, hasn't this kind of always been the case? I mean, there's always been some behind the scenes mudslinging, and it's happened for years.
I mean, this has been going on since I first started going to the legislature in January of 1977.
Oh, right.
I mean, and it was going on before that. I mean, this is just what happened.
Would you say that because we live in a world more of these and this, that things get out so much faster that now it's in the public view now is the reason why? Because what you're describing is not the first time that's ever happened. It's probably the 100th time that's happened.
Right.
I'm just throwing a number out there. I don't know. But because of the communication today, Gene, right? Because like you said, going all the way back, there's been mudslinging and arguing and as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and the Senate's always been the House of Lords, and us poor old folks over in the House, you know.
I love Gene.
We're of the people.
Dean's not here, so we'll pick on Dean a little bit.
We love Dean.
Senator Kirby.
Pro Tem, Mr. Pro Tem.
Mr. Pro Tem,
As,
that's
you
right.
know, but no, I mean, look, those guys over there are good guys. They do. But they have historically always done things a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like we have voting machines. We go in and we punch the button to vote. They still got to go through the roll calls. They do things methodically. And that's the way they like it. That's the way they want to do it. That's the way they choose to do it. So it's just like with a budget. This is the way they've always done it, and that's what they expected. So, us trying to change the game, they don't like it, and I get that. I understand that. Everybody there knows how they feel, you know. So, nobody likes people to change things on them. So, but at the same time, it needs to be more transparent for everybody, not just us, but for them too. But we just need to. To take a little bit more time and do it the right way.
Yeah. Right. And I'm not smart enough to spring it on them or have this political trap for them on the issue or whatever. So we've telegraphed it. We have said publicly to anybody that would listen, and we've said to them privately, eye to eye, we're going to change this. We're going to do it different. And like I said earlier, I don't know if they didn't believe me then, but I think they believe us now. Now, whether or not they'll change and come with us on this issue, I don't know. We're still going to attempt to do it in a different way.
Even with the way you had to butt heads a little bit, you did have a successful year.
We had an extremely successful
year. You really did.
Even with the budget.
Even with the budget, you had really got a lot accomplished.
Well, I said, you hear people say this, and I really don't like this phrase, but it's probably true, is you don't want to see the sausage being made. But it was actually pretty good sausage.
It was right, but nobody really cares to see the sausage actually made. And I say that a lot
there are
around
people
here.
with computers and iPhones now that actually do want to see it. And then when you throw politics on top of it, and everybody, as we all know, everybody got there because people voted for them and decided that's the best person, he or she is the best person to represent us, whether it's House or Senate, at the legislature. And so those people feel like every member there, House and Senate both, feel like they're there to represent their people, and their ideas are the best ideas. And,
of course,
here we go. And so the trick is keeping everybody focused on, what is best for all Mississippi. And then sometimes that's my job, and sometimes I don't do so well at it. And sometimes
I think we had a federal representative that wrote a book about it called Herding Cats.
Herding Cats.
But I mean, you think about, we got 122 members. I can't imagine what it's like to have 400. What is it? 85 or 435 in the U.S. House.
In the U.S. House.
I can't. I just can't.
Yeah, Mike's got his hands full.
He's got his hands full.
Right. You have it on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having 218 that you had to whip around?
I cannot.
I mean, and he needs more. We need to send him more. But right. I can't imagine.
And, we do have a 2/3 majority. 79 of the 122 are Republicans, and we have 2 independents who also happen to be ladies, and they're very independent. Those 2. We have 17 ladies in the House, but 2 are independents. So there is a 2/3 majority. So when people are they seem shocked when conservative legislation or budgets come out of the House, I'm like, what do you expect? It's 2/3 Republican. Right. It's what people sent us here to do. I'm not mad at anybody about it, but we're fairly conservative in our politics in Mississippi, and Mississippi as a state is right of center, and overwhelmingly voted for President Trump, and I think as we move forward, you're going to continue to see that. Now, what's right for Mississippi may look a little different than what's right for Texas or California or Tennessee or Florida. You pick the state, but you hear the governor say it all the time. We have some momentum here in our state, and it's real. And whether you like to hear it or not, he's actually right.
But it is real.
You can feel it when we go to these other states or legislative conferences. For the first time in my 14 years, people actually come over to the Mississippi table, and they want to know about our education gains or our economic development gains and things like that. growing GDP, like all the things that have happened. It's pretty cool to see that shift and that turnaround, because we were called some very bad names when we passed third grade reading gate and some different things.
Yeah, right. But you've been very successful this term and even last term, but this term especially. I mean, with being able to lower taxes, cutting grocery taxes. Now, we did grow up a little bit on gas tax.
We did, but it hadn't been adjusted. It was stagnant since '87.
I know, right?
And try to run the city of Pearl's budget on a 1987 flat tax. You can't do it. Or your budget at your house or your business.
You can't do it.
So that was not, that wasn't pleasant for Republicans to sit down and talk about. Y'all, we've got to fix this fuel tax going forward if we're going to fund our roads and get us into the 21st century. We've got deficient bridges all over the state. Now, we've done better, and part of that is because of the surpluses, I would say, from conservative budgeting over the last 12, 14 years to get us to this point. We hadn't borrowed money. This is going to be the third, fourth year in a row that we hadn't borrowed a dollar again. So I'm proud of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I know we've sat right here at this table with Gene and Dean and me and discussed this very bill, HB1, and we talked about, I was an advocate for, even said it right here publicly, let's just punt it a year. Let's see what happens with the federal bills that are coming out. How's the economy going to do? And of course, I kind of said even then, if I look back on Trump's first 4 years, we did really well. Now he's going to have 4 years where he's actually got a lot of help in Congress. It'll be that much better. But that's just a guess. We don't know that for sure. So why not just give it a minute and let's revisit this next
instead
year.
Of a minute, we gave it 13 years. The phase out of the personal income tax. The phase out of the personal income tax is over 13
That's where
years.
I was going.
It's a little slower than our original House bill. It's the way the Senate amended. But I think it's conservative. I think it's strategic. I think over the long haul, we can absorb that.
Right.
We still derive a little over $2 billion of our $7 billion plus budget from personal income tax. So we didn't get in this mess of funding state government off of your personal income tax, and we won't get out of it. I have some very conservative friends who are like, just rip the Band-Aid off, Jason, eliminate it and be done with it. I'm like, it's not that simple.
I mean,
because I think you want your roads paved and you still want some police protection and you still want certain things from your state government.
We're changing Mississippi's economy is exactly what you're saying. We're going from a rural farming economy to more of a business technology economy.
That's right.
And that takes time.
It takes time and it's prudent to be cautious.
Agreed.
And for it's the folks that say we didn't do it fast enough or cut enough, quick enough. I hear them, but I've got some duty to do it in an orderly fashion where we don't end up in a position where we're like, we have to go back and undo something because we went too fast.
Right. It's easier to go the other way than it is to have to go back.
And if we get 5 years down the road and we see we're still pulling in too much money, there's nothing that prevents us from changing it because we're going to be there
in session every year.
Right. And a lot of people are like, why do y'all keep talking about these tax cuts with uncertainty from the feds coming and just the national economy and the world economy? It's because of what you just said. We continue this year. We're going to bank another $500 million that we didn't budget and spend. So we've got, and come June 30th, we'll have about $2 billion in the checking account. Well, rainy day fund is full at over $700 million. It's a lot to not necessarily be proud of, but a lot to point to say, we think we're budgeting right and we think this is the proper direction for our state. As long as we're taking in more money than we're spending, you're going to continue to hear Republicans talk about those tax cuts. We hope we finally, hit the right nail with this mix that is in House Bill 1. We've lowered the highest grocery tax in the nation from 7 to 5, and that takes place immediately come July 1st.
Yeah,
here in just a couple weeks.
Just a couple of weeks. And you hit on it again. The governor is right. There is a buzz going on. But I do think a lot of that has to do with fiscal responsibility.
It does.
The corporations of the world are looking at Mississippi and going, wow, they've got their financial house in order. They don't owe anybody anything. They've got a
low regulation.
Right to work
state.
Right. So it really starts looking.
Want you here.
It really starts looking, especially the fact that we're physically responsible.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Especially when you're coming from California, who is physically irresponsible.
And the government continuing to look for ways to get in your pocket.
Correct. They just pass more taxes.
Right. So, and, they've dug that hole. We have maybe it's because we didn't have the next big shiny thing here. We just kind of had to, as a state, kind of eke it out, so to speak. But it's gotten us to a place where we are punching above our weight. We are able to kind of bob and weave with national trends, and just to the point of where it's cool to be from Mississippi right now.
The governor announcing about the NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Big deals. These are big deals. But a lot of that has to do with the legislature and you guys and your leadership there that's building that groundwork for him to be able to do that.
Yeah, and when companies like Amazon or Continental Tire, different very successful international companies show up and want to do business in Mississippi, it makes other folks immediately sit up and say, well, I got to go check this out. And the personal income tax thing, by eliminating the personal income tax, there are 8 states that have no income tax. Unfortunately for us, one of them is our neighbor to the north in Tennessee, who's just been killing it for years.
Right.
It finally it won't fix everything, and it won't get everybody that's considering Tennessee to come to Mississippi, but at least it takes one more piece off the table that Tennessee could point to and say, yeah, but we have no income tax, and they still do. We're a 4% flat tax state now, which is good. And in states that have them, that's very competitive. But we're competing with Tennessee and Texas and Florida. And to do it, that's the direction. Not counting the fact that as Republicans and conservatives, we ought to be finding ways to get out of your pocketbook, and if we can, and still fund essential services. And I think we've shown to this point that we are able and willing to do that.
I do too. All right, so let's pivot just a little bit to another subject that's always hot. Let's talk a little bit about school choice, because Trump's got it in his one big beautiful bill. And he's also doing away with the Department of Education if he can get all of that done.
Sure.
So there's been a lot of debate about school choice here, just tons of it. I know we've had that debate here plenty. Where do you, Mr. Speaker, fall on this issue?
Personally, for me, I'm for it, because all things being equal, and I know they're not equal. They're certainly not in Mississippi, but all things being equal, I look at it through the lens, and here's where I start from. We trust parents to make every other decision about their kids' lives, from what they're going to have for supper tonight, what's put in the grocery basket when they go shopping, to are we going to church Sunday? Are we going to play this sport? We trust them to make every other decision, even about their health care. Yet on education, it's like all of a sudden, but there's this catch. You are forced into this model that is our public education system in the state. Now, that is tied to a zip code in a school district. Having said that, our schools have been incredibly successful, especially the last few years, to the point of they've
done really well.
We have risen from 49th or 50th in most measured categories to the mid-teens overall, and in some categories even higher than that. And part of that is, again, we were a conservative, low regulation state, and during COVID, we didn't just punt. Our administrators rolled up their sleeves and figured out ways to keep their schools open, keep their teachers teaching and their kids learning, and we didn't have this huge setback that so many states had. So they're to be commended for that. I would also say, though Republicans have gotten a bad rap on education in general, I would say it goes back 14 years ago when Republicans took control of the House, and thereby they already had it in the Senate, but getting it in the House, and now we've been able to institute some conservative measures, and what I say common sense conservative measures that led to huge gains, like third grade reading gate we were talking about earlier, things like that. Now, back to your question of school choice. You can be for school choice and not be against public education, because statistics bear it out in every state. Parents prefer their local public school. It's usually where they went to school. They want that experience for their kids. Most schools are if they're not the largest employer in town, they're one of the largest. And then there's just that community feel that, like here in Pearl, everybody rallies around Pearl High School and their school and their teachers and their administration and what it does for the community. School choice, to me, is not a knock on that or something anti that. To me, it's simply empowering parents and taxpayers, mind you, that if that's not the best fit for them, they should be the one to make that decision, and it shouldn't be, well, you're on your own. If you're not taking this product that the government's offering you for your locale, then you're on your own. And I think we can do it in a way. Now, maybe choice here looks different than it does in Tennessee or in Texas, their most recently passed universal school choice. Maybe it looks different here. There's no denying, Mississippi's messy, long history when it comes to public education, how we got private schools to begin with, all of that messiness, the black and white issue surrounding that was 50 years ago. We should be able to have adult conversations, common sense, back and forth about what is best for kids and what is best for Mississippians without it being simply about either race. We have proved we are funding schools at historical levels. We had a new funding formula last year. It was fully funded last year. It's fully funded again this year. That's twice in 2 years. That's right. That's as many times as MAEP was fully funded in its almost 30-year existence. I know, right? Congratulations. So we're now you didn't hear a lot about that. No. I saw some of the liberal press finally put out an article this weekend. It's like pulling a back tooth probably from the writing. But they finally eased it out over the weekend. Public education without much fanfare gets fully funded. Now, you didn't hear a word about that. No. You heard that it's bad budgets. We weren't funding core services of government during that special session, that conservative budget. You didn't hear one time that they fully funded. But it was fully funded. So I'm saying we're trying to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to public schools. I just think, especially for kids in these chronically underperforming and failing districts, I want to give them some options. I'm open to what that looks like, but to just say no, to me, that's being a little short-sighted. And now we are surrounded by states.
Well, you mentioned the community. Schools are built around community. And that's probably our biggest issue, I think, is because if you don't live in the community, then why should you go to our school? Because you're going to water down the community with students that don't live here. They're not going to have a ground. I think that's the biggest argument. How do you overcome that?
Well, in the portability piece, first of all, newsflash for most people, even though they love their public school, so they think everybody else is going to want it. Most surrounding families and kids don't want your public school. They want theirs. So it's not going to be this flood. Yeah. But what we talked about in the portability piece, allowing public school kids to transfer to another public school, was only if the receiving school accepted them. And you say, oh, well, that's going to end up, folks are going to say we refused them for the wrong reason or that sort of thing. The legislation that passed in the House simply said, school board says we've got 10 spots that we could take 10 people and no more, or 20 spots, or we're full, we're at capacity. All we asked them was to simply document that, and if somebody shows up and they otherwise meet the requirements, let them in, as long as we were going to let the state portion of the per pupil spending follow that child, and we were setting up a separate account to make up the difference so that we weren't sending local taxes from one school district to another. In other words,
Brandon and Pearl.
Right.
If you just use our neighbor.
Yes. So somebody in Brandon wanted to come to Pearl.
School District and Pearl School District.
And Pearl School Board had said, we've got room to take X amount of patients and or students in these grades.
Patients, yeah, they're patients. You need some patients with these kids.
They take them, but only the state portion would that other school district lose, if you will. The state portion would follow, but the local taxes would stay there. The state portion would follow, and we had set up a $5 million account that would be drawn from until it's gone. Now, that's a different issue than what we talked about for kids in chronically underperforming districts. But we've taken a lot of heat for, hey, you've got some highly rated school districts that actually have underperforming schools inside those districts. Right. Why don't we look at literacy or some other measures to decide what really is a successful school? So I think you'll see us spend some time in the off season just looking closely at really literacy and math scores and some other things instead of just purely the rating system that MDE puts in place. Nothing wrong with that system. We gotta have one to try to figure out where everybody is. But you usually know where a school is. I go around the state, and when I'm in a rep's district, they want to take me to their school, and we go tour the school. You can tell within the first 5 minutes, I could peg their rating almost like that.
Just walking in the door.
Because the feel you get,
Yes.
the vibe you get. So, and like I told you, I grew up in an education household. My sister was a principal there in Kosciuszko at the elementary school for 25 years. She's now with MDE. She's looking at things from a statewide perspective now. So I get it. It's at the kitchen table. It's at every holiday meal. It's not like I'm insulated from it personally.
Right.
But like I told you earlier, I have F schools in my legislative district and I have A schools.
Yeah.
You see the good and the bad, and there ought to be a way to give parents and kids who want something better and different without saying, you just need to pick up and move. I don't want to hollow out places like the Mississippi Delta or the central regions of our state, or maybe even on the far east side where we've had some chronically underperforming schools. And I also think this. I think if you open it up a little bit, I think it allows even those schools to say, y'all, it's time for us to get in the game, and we've got to think differently about how we run our schools and how we attract our students. And ultimately, for local governments, how they fund them. I think we're going to have some robust conversations about it in the off season. We're going to form a committee.
This just needs to be a more table talk, more conversation.
And I want those people at the table. MDE is going to be welcome there. My only, our only, if you will, prerequisites are come with an open mind and let's see where we get. We're going to be talking probably about teacher pay raises. We may even talk about some merit pay for our teachers. Like there's a lot. It's a lot more to it than just purely school choice or universal school choice. But I do think it's in the Republican Party's platform. Our president, who was overwhelmingly elected, not only in Mississippi but nationally, but certainly here in Mississippi, he has made it a priority and said he's going to tie federal funds to it. For us to stick our head in the sand and just pretend like we're not and can't be part of that movement, we should be able to be part of that movement. And the bills the House passed this year, like letting homeschool kids compete in extracurricular activities with their local school district. Almost all states are doing that now. It's affectionately known as the Tim Tebow Act. There should be a way to get those kids in. Their parents are taxpayers. They're footing the bill at the local school. If they otherwise meet the requirements, that shouldn't be this huge fight that it is. Seems like that ought to be something we could do, a baby step. That probably would expose kids to the public school that otherwise might not get exposed to it. They may end up there as a student when they see that this is actually well run and good for my kids and they're thriving here. So I see that as a calling card for public schools and not a, somebody sticking their nose under the tent type thing.
Right. And I don't agree with burying our head in the sand either, but it does need to have some good, honest debate. And as you said, don't bring the prejudged
and the issues
idea.
That you bring up, don't think those hadn't come up in my office as the House members come and see me about it, or even a few senators. But I think we still, when we start out talking about it from a system standpoint and not talking about it from a parental and child standpoint, I think we missed the mark right off the bat. And I think we need to bring the conversation back, lower the temperature, and start with the parents and the child, and then build it out from there. And I don't have any preconceived notions about where we go. We are going to spend a bunch of time on that issue this off season. I intend to form a select committee led by our education chairman, Rob Robertson, and some others that have shown interest or not interest.
Or not interest, right.
We're going to put all the people in the room and see where we get, And again, you may not want to see those fights, but I think the end result will be something that people can be proud of.
That's the making of the sausage you get.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the making of the sausage you get. Well, I just to kind of button that, you do have a pretty good track record for 2 years as the leader of the House. So I would say that you've earned my trust that you can have a good conversation.
Well, thank you for saying that.
And work something out, because I'm not from Pearl. I got here as quick as I could. It's that's the saying. I'm not from here, but I got here as quick as I could get here.
Right.
But I've had 4 kids graduate from Pearl High School, and every one of them has a master's degree or higher now. They're all very much productive citizens. I've got one that's a teacher and a baseball. Matter of fact, they just won state at Madison Central. He's a baseball coach. But so I love education, and I don't want to see it ruined.
Sure.
But the conversation,
and I certainly don't want that, and no House member does either.
No, of course not. And nobody's setting out to do that, obviously.
Right.
But just more conversation, and I think that y'all will eventually find some kind of ground where it works for everybody, because no kid needs to be left behind. We've had that very discussion. There are kids in our neighboring city right next door that is very unfair what they have to go through at their school district, that really would love to get out of there, but they're stuck because they live in a zip code. I get it. I really do. And I have empathy for them. I really do. And as we've table talked here, we'll just move to Pearl. Well, that's easier said than done.
Well, some people, they do. The parents are.
Yeah, they will big up and right.
Are forward thinking enough that they do it at all costs.
Right. But there's plenty that can't.
But there's plenty that can't.
Even though they want to.
We've already talked about single parent homes.
Yep.
I have kids in my district and in every district that live with grandparents. They're multi-generations living in the same house, and they're doing good to get to school.
Correct.
I'm not under some grand illusion that those people are going to wake up and want something great and better and different for their kid. But if there are options, if there are ways, I don't want to shut them out.
Yeah,
totally.
let's find.
And I don't know what that looks like.
Let's find it.
Let's find what that is.
Let's find what that is.
We're going to, I think we've shown the past 2 years, we've got a track record of being fairly open and honest in the debate, and probably telegraphing too much where we're going. Whether we talk about funding formula rewrite from 2 years ago or our House Bill 1 this year on tax reform. But again, I told you, it's the only way I know to do it.
Sure.
So,
and this is a great show to just kind of flesh it out. We just kind of talk about it. We just kind of talk about things.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can have some of our education folks back.
We'll be glad to have them right here in that chair.
You let Dean and Gene wear referee shirts, and whistle, and you keep the clock.
We'll put them all around the table, and we'll have a long discussion about it. We certainly can. It's a lot of fun. All right,
we want for parents, statewide, what parents of Pearl Public Schools have: the community, the pride, the exceptional schools, all the things that it offers and that people enjoy. That should be a model for others.
And Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that we will get there.
We're going to work hard on it.
You'll get us there.
You have some other committees that you're appointing. I know one on. I know you're reappointing the one for Jackson.
Revitalization of Capital City, which is probably pretty important to your folks here in Pearl. That's being a neighbor. We're going to keep that committee going for another year. 5 pieces of legislation came out of that committee. It is chaired by
a Pearl girl, Shonda.
Yeah, she's a Northeast Jackson resident now, but she's elected from there, and she's one of our independents.
Shonda Yates is who I'm talking about.
Yates is her name, but she co-chairs that with Clay Mansell, who's a resident of the city of Clinton. And most of the members on that committee are from the metro area.
Right.
5 pieces of legislation came out of that committee and made it all the way across the governor's desk. Things like regulating panhandling. I know that's crazy thought, but you're giving law enforcement some tools to deal with that, and communities some tools to deal with that. Encampments, where you can camp, where you can't on public property, and letting cities be able to manage that. Blighted property, giving some tax incentives for folks to invest in a lot of this blighted property. Tax forfeited property, letting our Secretary of State, who's got some great ideas. We have tons of property in the Jackson metro area that has escheated to the state for non-payment of taxes. Like tax investors didn't even bid on them at the tax sale, at the local tax sale. So those eventually find their way to the state of Mississippi. Well, we can't do anything with them other than offer them for sale. Right. One of those bills frees up our Secretary of State to make some investments, at least clean the property up and get it more presentable so that somebody might see an opportunity there and buy it and that sort of thing. So I was proud of the product that they put on the field, and I think it led to some good reform that, again, baby steps, but something positive, and I'm excited about Jackson's new leadership. John Horn, he is a Democrat and sits on the other side of the aisle from us, but I don't question his motives in wanting to lead the city of Jackson, and he's got good relationships around the Capitol. So we're excited about
Right.
we might could build on that a little bit going forward.
And I think he feels the same way, doesn't he? I mean, he's talked about
He
it.
does. His eyes are wide open.
He's talked about it openly.
Yeah. And I think that's why you saw a movement
Mhm.
of Jacksonians get behind him. That,
Right,
that
right.
frankly, I think is good for the city long term.
Agreed. I mean, it is our state capital.
And I've evolved on that
Mhm.
for a long time. And I had constituents tell me in my district, "Don't you spend my tax dollars on the city of Jackson." and while
Well, I can't blame them.
while that legislation doesn't necessarily spend tax dollars
Mhm.
on it, it does shine a light and
Mhm.
focus and kind of some pointed specific legislation. Now that committee is going to spend a lot of time this off season talking about Jackson Water
Mhm.
and what that looks like going forward, because there are issues about water and sewer that the
Exactly.
federal government's not going to always be here picking up the tab. At some
No.
point,
Right.
it's going to go back to
Savannah Street
Jacksonians and
sewer plant's got to have something done with that.
what all that looks like. There's huge issues surrounding that.
Yep.
And for a lot of people, whether we want to admit it or not, the only thing they ever see of Mississippi is Jackson. They get off the airplane and they
I know,
run
right?
into the city for their meetings, whether it's with corporate or government.
Right.
And we should be putting our best foot forward
We need to
if
do
we
better.
can. We
Yep.
can do better. We can do better, and I want to help them do better.
Agreed. All right, so let's cover one other thing. Let's talk about a little health care.
Okay.
Because that's a big deal for most people. We've talked about it here, but health care. One of the things that's on your agenda is health care. I know it's something because your wife being a
Sure.
nurse practitioner, it's in your wheelhouse.
Sure, I tell people this when I first got elected. When you get elected, that first week of session, you turn in a preference card to the speaker of what committees you want to be on, and you rank them.
Right.
We have rules that say you have to get 2 of your top 7, and if you're a veteran, you get 3 of your top 7. That sort of thing. I got called in by Speaker Gunn 2 weeks into my first session. He goes, "I got your preference sheet." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're the only person that put Medicaid number 1." He said, "Why did you do that?" He goes, "I'm going to put you on the committee, but why did you do that?" And I said, "Because my wife says that's a mess, and we need to try to work on it." I said, "I know nothing about it, but
Right. Right.
So anyway, that was my first.
Right.
I wanted to be on committees like transportation or ways and means or wildlife, fisheries, and parks.
Sure.
All these sexy committees.
Sure.
I'd go to those committee meetings and nobody would be there. It'd just be like the 3 of us sitting in this room. Then I got to my first Medicaid meeting, and it's like wrapped 3D with healthcare advocates,
Mhm.
lobbyists,
Mhm.
corporate
Mhm.
healthcare giants.
Mhm.
I was like, "Boy, something's going on in here." I mean,
Right.
It was hot from the very first meeting. And
Yeah.
so what you figure out, to your question, is healthcare touches everybody's
Well,
life.
that's where I was
And
going, was
from the
Medicaid
top-
for all.
From the top
Yeah.
to the bottom,
Yeah.
everybody
Mhm.
wants, needs, hopes for some sort of health care. Or maybe we see pointed out the lack thereof in certain regions and places in our state. So it's huge. We have a huge Medicaid population already in our state.
Mhm.
I tell people, if you're sitting at a 4-way in Mississippi, one of the 4 is on Medicaid.
Mhm.
And sometimes we're almost to, if you're at a 3-way,
Wow.
somebody is on it. But
Wow.
certainly at a 4-way stop, and there's
Yeah.
4. So one of the 4 is
Is
on it.
a Medicaid
And when you
recipient.
throw long-term care in there for our
Sure.
seniors that are on Medicaid, it's a huge expense.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
nobody here, and certainly not myself, if you were drawing up healthcare from scratch today, nobody would draw it up the way it is.
Oh, no.
The government is so embedded in it now with Medicare and Medicaid. It is a mess, and I don't have a good solution, but I do know this. Besides K-12 education, Medicaid is our second highest budget eater,
Right.
and then corrections falls behind it. But we spend almost $1 billion of our budget on Medicaid.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
an issue for us
It
in our
is.
state.
And one of the issues that I brought up, other than drugstores and pharmacies, has been these certificates of needs
Yep.
for hospital beds. I'm an advocate for let the market decide. Let the market decide what the market can handle. Drive competition so that
Sure.
cost goes down.
And last year, that was one of our select committees we formed last year.
Right.
Was on certificate of need reform.
Right.
That led to, now they were baby steps, but they were real steps to finally start reforming. Things like, we had lifted the investment cap. Nowadays, if you own a clinic or a hospital, before you can just do improvements, you've got to go before the Board of Health
Mhm.
and get permission to
Right.
spend your own money
I know.
on your own facility so that Gene might be attracted to it and come there versus somewhere else.
Right.
What part about that makes sense? So we were finally able to lift those caps and get them up even above inflation to a place where folks can spend their own money should they choose. And then we were able to make some surgical changes in, no pun intended there with the medical thing, but some small changes in the process
Sure.
of getting one approved.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it passed the House, overwhelming, got to the Senate, they amended it and put a poison pill in there that was offensive. We took it because that was the only way we could get it passed, but it got to the governor's desk and he vetoed it. And he said, if you'll take out that one provision that the Senate added, I would love to sign it. So you're going to see that legislation come back probably clean. Right. And it may even have a few more features that we weren't able to get in this session. But you're right, that is a step. But again, I have conservative colleagues of mine who say, just get rid of it, do away with it today. You do have folks in the healthcare space who have invested their life savings, or their investors have invested heavily on the model that we have. And so there's got to be a repeal of it, but it's got to happen slowly. We didn't get in this overnight. We won't get out of it overnight.
And I agree with that. So,
that's an issue.
Right.
We were going to remove it on basically MRI machines and those are prevalent now. And
right.
For the longest time, you have to have one of those. If you're going to put one in your community, you've got to, and you see the fight between healthcare facilities and hospitals and all of that stuff. Healthcare is a huge issue.
It is. And part of that too is insurance companies and the ability to sell health insurance across state lines.
And newsflash, but this, everybody knows this. We're not a very healthy state.
We are not.
We like our fried chicken, yours truly included.
Right here.
And, so
don't be talking about my food.
What'd you say?
Don't be talking about my food.
Yeah, right.
That's right. It's very personal.
It's very personal for us here in the South.
It's not great for our health metrics overall. So as all these chronic conditions that seem to find their way to the surface in Mississippi, it's challenging for our healthcare providers and professionals to come up with that solution. And we want to be part of it and do what we can. It's not a lot we can do from a state perspective. The feds, we need some help there. It's kind of like the NIL stuff going on.
Right.
We need Congress to act on some things. Now, Big Beautiful Bill's got some Medicaid reform in it and some other things.
I was going to say it does.
We'll see what ends up across the finish line and how that affects Mississippi. It could have a real effect because now our hospitals provide so much of the match money we use to fund our Medicaid program. It's kind of like we tax them and then they get the money back as they see those individuals.
Right.
Feds seem to be moving away from that, and that incentivizing that way, and that's to a large extent how we fund them now. So we'll have to figure that out.
On the horizon.
On the horizon, as we figure out some sort of way. As you know, we did not expand Medicaid in Mississippi.
Nope.
We've got a huge population of uninsured girls that fall into that middle ground. They make too much, so they don't qualify. Yet either they're running their own small business and can't afford it, or their employer doesn't provide it, and they're just in that space, and they end up in your ER in an uncompensated care situation where we all end up paying it in other ways.
Right.
It costs what it costs. And so we'll see.
It's still getting paid by the taxpayer.
That's correct.
It's still getting paid by the taxpayer.
That's right.
It's just as you described it, it's in other ways.
And 40 states have expanded Medicaid to cover those people. I'm not putting that forward as the end-all be-all solution.
Right.
But if it's not the solution, let's talk about what it is. And that's, we've had a little trouble getting folks to the table to say, well, what can we do? That's not let's figure it out, because half the states are Republican states that have done it and half are Democrat states. And then there are those 10 or 12 that hadn't. Let's figure out what we can do. And most of the 10 or 12 that hadn't done it, they don't hardly have any Medicaid population.
Right.
So it's just not an issue.
And we have a lot.
We have a lot.
Right.
We have a lot.
And I am not for more government programs.
No, we're not either. So,
just not.
And we shouldn't be. We're all about, our independence here and getting out of people's lives, not more into them. But
yes,
it's a tough nut to crack.
It is, and it's not going to get fixed overnight.
Right.
And I agree, there needs to be a gradual change with all of this: insurance, taxes, the repeal of, all this needs to be a gradual thing because, as you mentioned earlier, it didn't start this way overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight. So I think you're headed on the right track.
Well, we're going to continue to work on it. I've got some really smart folks.
Yes.
Gene knows this. We've got some guys and girls in the house that is their thing. Is trying to figure that out. Sam Creekmore, he's not a doctor, but he's the son of a doctor. So he grew up in that world. He's from New Albany. He's our chairman of public health.
Yeah.
And he's super smart. He's a landscape architect by trade, but healthcare policy is his passion. And he's made some great strides working with our Dr. Edney, who's over our Department of Health now, and that board. He's worked hand in hand with them. And we're excited about the future with him.
Well, I'm excited about the future in general.
We are too.
I think we're going in the right direction. We have been going in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to it. What else is on the agenda next year that we didn't cover?
We're going to work hard, as you already talked about, in the education space. We're going to continue to work on those issues around the capital city, and the CON reform. We'll be back with that. We will. What else, Gene?
Well, you got election. You're appointing that committee on the elections, and then
election integrity and right to vote. There's been lots of conversation about early voting and our absentee voting in Mississippi and the way we do it, where we just invite you to come and lie and say you're going to be gone on election day, when the real reason is you don't want to miss work,
right,
or whatever.
Our clerks are open on a Saturday, so they can come down here and vote on a Saturday. Right.
Right. So in a way that we could do something that is not wide open, but is there some sweet spot in there where we could allow a week or 10 days? We've seen some conservative states do something in the early voting space, but that wasn't just wide open, so we're going to study that closely. We've looked long and hard at restoring voting rights for folks who have paid their debts to society, they've served their time, they've paid all their fines and fees and everything, and 5 years conviction free after that. We've looked at a path for their rights to be restored to vote. And I tell people this all the time. Folks are like, well, I've never had somebody show up at my law office, and I don't practice this particular space in law practice of restoring somebody's voting rights. But there is a path to get that done. It usually involves getting the legislature to pass a bill. I don't know if you ever kept up with that, but at the end of the session, we have a suffrage bill.
Yeah.
And that's more about who you know.
Right. It's always who you know. Right.
I've never had somebody show up at my office who was still dealing drugs, wanting their right to vote. I've had guys show up at my office who have gotten their life on track, now have a family. Right. They're gainfully employed, and they're missing a promotion at work because they can't get their CDL or they can't get their license to carry. And it's because they can't vote. Is there a path for me? And so most states allow a path. And so we've had lots of conversations about that. And Price Wallace, who's one of the most conservative members in the House of Representatives, I'll put his voting record up against anybody's. He chairs the Constitution Committee. He has passed a bill to do this and passed as far as restoring suffrage rights. I think it's still worthy of conversation. And we say we're about getting people, rehabilitated. We do a terrible job. I don't know what we're doing wrong, but chances are somebody's in the custody of the state of Mississippi in one of our prisons. Chances are within 18 months, about half of them are going to be back with us. So, and we could educate them at State, Ole Miss, Southern, or Jackson State cheaper than we house them at Parchman for a year. We ought to be able to figure out better ways to rehab our folks. And part of that is, I think, at some point, post-conviction, when they've paid their debt to society, letting them have a path to restoring their rights to vote. And just all that comes from that as a fundamental right. So we've been willing to be open and talk about that. And Noah Sanford, who's our chairman of elections from down in Covington County, as well as Price Wallace from Simpson County, they're going to spend some time working on what does that look like for Mississippi.
And I mean, right now there's no incentive.
There's no incentive. There's no incentive.
Nothing.
And again, these are about people that have moved on and not only paid all their debt to society and fees and fines, 5 years after that, they've lived perfectly clean. Anyway.
Right.
We're going to
and you're usually talking about the one person that got caught up in something.
Right.
And the Bible's pretty clear about forgiving.
They are. I mean, it is. Yeah. Got caught up in something, ended up getting in trouble, and now they got to pay for it the rest of their life. I mean, that's literally where it is.
Yeah.
Sure. And the other big thing we're going to spend a lot of time on is PERS. We hadn't talked about our public employee retirement system.
Right. Y'all passed it this year.
We passed a new fifth tier.
Created a fifth tier
for folks starting in March of 26.
Yep.
Doesn't change anybody's benefits that are already retired or already working. But for new hires after March of 26, they will not get that defined benefit plan in the 3% cost of living guarantee, growth. First step is to stop digging the hole. Yeah. And that was, I thought, a good first step. As painful as it was, and nobody was jumping up and down to do that, it was a good first step.
Yeah.
Now we need to find another dedicated stream of revenue. Though we allowed an increase in the employer contribution of 2.5% over the next 5 years, we still got a $26 billion deficit. And so a new stream of revenue to go to that, what does that look like? Maybe it just comes from excess revenues. Maybe it comes from lottery proceeds. Maybe it comes from this mobile sports betting debate that continues to rage in the House about. Now, we passed it. It's not much of a debate. It passes overwhelmingly in the House, and it finds an unruly death in the Senate. Can't even get a committee vote. So I don't know how
maybe that comes back on the table this year. Yeah,
politics can be so different from House and Senate on that issue. But one of those select committees is going to look at PERS and dedicated funding to address the deficit going forward. They're going to spend a lot of time on that.
Now, the economy will help out some.
Economy will help out.
With some of that.
Will help out.
Right, will help out some with the
If
deficit.
we could slightly raise our assumed rate of return to what they've actually historically enjoyed the last 30 years,
right,
that would knock down about a third of the deficit.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, find something that could shoot $50 to $100 million of unencumbered funds.
Right.
Not subject to political whims, but pass it and put it in law where actuaries can see, okay, they've legislated it, that money's going there.
Right.
We can start to kind of
whittle it down.
Over 10 and 20 years, we're in a much better space and fund it at 60, 70, 80%.
So why don't we do that?
It's tricky politics.
Why don't we do that?
So obvious it's right there.
That's so obvious. It's sitting right here. Why don't we do that?
As we pass allowing mobile sports betting, which I've told people this, I don't wake up every morning wanting to legalize mobile sports betting.
Right.
But it is going on in our state. We allow it on site at our casinos. And the folks that want to do it off site are doing it. They're just doing it through some out of state platform.
Right.
Let's regulate it. Our gaming commission and operators have done an excellent job in Mississippi.
I think they've proven
states that for the most part have been without scandal.
Thank you.
Let them run it and run it right, and let's capture that revenue and dedicate it to PERS. But if that's not the direction the Senate wants to go, let's talk about some other ways. And so we're very open to that discussion, and we're going to keep beating that drum.
Let's keep beating that drum.
Yeah,
I'm for that. I picked it at Representative Newman over here when y'all passed the PERS legislation about, you didn't give me a choice. What if I want to go to fifth tier? Because it might actually be better because you get to invest a little bit differently. And I'm like, what if I want to move? Sure. You didn't give me a bridge to move. I know why, but I was really just messing with him. Where's my bridge? I might want to go over there.
Right.
It might be beneficial to me because I do think it's a really it's a good idea. The way that y'all put it together, I think it's actually very workable. And if people would sit down and look at it, they'll understand it's actually really good for you.
It's not bad.
No.
And again,
it's not.
It sets us on a path to get back to some level of sustainability that it works going forward. But the huge politics surrounding that issue, that was just one leg of a four-legged chair that was House Bill 1. The politics on that piece alone was enough to blow up a deal.
Right.
And you throw in talking about gas tax, grocery tax, and personal income tax.
I know, right?
Boy, people didn't know where to aim the gun. You know what I'm saying?
It was your one big, beautiful bill.
It was our one big, beautiful bill. I'm extremely proud of it. The politics were messy, but the end result was, I think, really good for Mississippians.
Right. Keeping your sanity?
Yes, sir. Gene helps me do that.
Are you having fun?
Some days we have fun.
I mean,
Some
for the
days we
most
have
part,
fun.
are you having a good? Do you like doing your job?
I do. I do.
You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it.
You couldn't do this otherwise.
Right.
But my wife reminds me all the time, you asked for this, you wanted this.
So no complaining.
And but it's rewarding. It's fun to see and rewarding to see the other side of some of these debates.
Right.
Like I said, we saw this play out with some somewhat unpopular, at least we took shots from certain corners on issues that we passed over these last several years. To see those things turn out to be positive and good for our state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we heard every time we were cutting taxes, it's going to wreck the state budget.
Right.
State revenues just continue to go this way.
Right.
Yeah. We heard when we were going to pigeonhole kids in the third grade reading day. Well, their scores have gone this way. Now that's also to be attributed to kudos are due with our teachers who adapted and said, you know what, we are going to focus on this. Mm-hmm. We're going to make this a priority, and they have, and the proof is in the pudding of the results of it.
Right, and
we're proud of that. So that part is rewarding to see those results, and it takes a little time, but it's worth it. It's worth it, and it makes most days fun.
It does, doesn't it? You enjoy doing it.
Let me make one comment about the history test that the Department of Education is doing away with.
Okay.
They're not doing away with teaching U.S. history. They're not doing away with teaching any history. They're just doing away with the test that all the teachers spend all their time teaching to the test.
Teaching to the test, right.
Let's just teach history.
Like doing that.
Yeah, let's just teach history and quit worrying about the test. That's all they're doing.
Well, and we hope that's going to be part of our education freedom package going forward as we look at choice and portability and homeschool kids competing extracurricular, different things like that. We're going to look at consolidation. There's some places.
We
have some places in our state where they're running 3 and 4 school districts that.
I know people fuss about it. We just talked about community. We just talked about. I get it.
You got to be surgical about it, and I would rather local folks make those decisions, but I want to empower them to make those decisions and what's best for them. And have MDE be a partner in that, and not to drag them into the debate, because again, that's a hot political debate when you start talking about consolidating schools.
Hot political debate.
But I'm saying at least consolidate the districts. Even if you may want to keep your 3 schools, but let's get them all under one umbrella.
Are we top heavy with superintendents? Are we top heavy with administration? Are we top heavy? Because from what I'm looking at, it kind of seems that way.
It seems that way. And again, though, that's not a shot at our administrators.
No.
You've got to have the right people at the top.
Right.
And if you go to these excellent school districts, guess what? You find good leadership right at the top.
Right.
And that trickles down.
I'm looking across the state. We have so many superintendents and so many assistant superintendents and so many principals.
We do.
Are we top heavy in administration? Is that something that needs to be looked at?
That's what we're talking about the districts. That we're not talking about consolidating schools. We're talking about consolidating school districts. And
the districts.
When you have 4 or more school districts in one county, and the population's not a fourth of what it is in Rankin County, you can't justify that.
No, it's hard.
And if you can get district consolidation, then that kind of leads or forces locals to have real conversations about, do we need 4 schools? But when you got 4 separate school boards and administrators, they're going to always protect. I don't blame them.
Of course, they're going to circle the wagons around there.
Say it's you're the problem, not me. I get it. It's natural. I've represented some of those folks. So, it's conversations worth having in our state. I think the city of Houston, Texas, has almost 3 million students in their city school system. They have 1 superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 times more than we have in our whole state.
Wow.
And I know that's one. That's
right. It's apples and oranges.
Outlier, but my point is, we could do a little better there. So I think you're going to see all of that as part of this conversation.
Well, this is why you like your job.
Yeah. Well, it makes for interesting days. That's for sure.
But that's not saying we're going to put Rankin and Pearl together.
That's what I heard you just say, Jim.
No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is they need to look at the ones that especially those districts that are non-performing.
Right.
They need to take a hard look at those.
Sure.
I think we still have a school district or 2 in the state that doesn't have a school.
Oh my! Oh my gosh!
At least one.
I didn't hear that.
Anyway, we're gonna work hard on it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're gonna have a good time. Man, I've enjoyed our conversation. It's been great.
We've enjoyed it too.
Will you come back?
Yes, sir.
Love to have you back.
So you get the scorecard out and say, we talked about these 40 things. Now, what did you get done?
What did you get done? No, I have all full in faith you will get a lot of things accomplished in the next session like you did these last 2. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for bringing
Sky
it.
does
Yes,
a
sir.
great job for y'all in Pearl, and you're represented well there, and he's to be commended for that.
Thank
He
you.
is well respected by his colleagues, and
Well,
when Gene talks, everybody listens.
he
I
has
don't know
done
about
really,
that.
really well because he filled some big shoes,
He did.
you know,
He sure did.
from Ray Rogers,
Mr. Ray,
you know, but you couldn't ask for a better replacement. I mean,
you're right.
fantastic.
I just try to do what the people want me to do.
That's exactly right. He's done great, which we appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing him.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having us. We're going to step aside, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what is actually going on this week in Pearl. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mayor Wyndham, and I'm thrilled to show you the city creating its own future. Pearl is located in Rankin County, the fastest growing county in Mississippi, and there's no question why. Access to great schools, even better shopping, and unbridled beauty make Pearl a town that truly embodies its name. And with a truly exceptional team of first responders, public safety is another key component of our success. With fantastic housing opportunities from quaint suburban neighborhoods to gorgeous lakefront properties, there's a place for you here in Pearl. You can't beat the location. Right outside of Pearl is the crossroads of the South, where Interstate 20 meets Interstate 55. From here, you can travel anywhere within the state or the country. Or you can choose to stay right here in Pearl or experience the small town atmosphere, community pride, and heart of the local residents.
Hi, folks, and welcome back into This Week in Pearl. As I predicted, it was going to be a fantastic conversation, and it was. Wow. Did we learn an awful lot from our speaker, Mr. Jason White. It was a wonderful conversation. So glad that he had the opportunity to come by and spend some time with us and really dive deep into some of the things that have been going on in the legislature and some of the things that will be on his plate coming up in the next legislative session. So a lot of fun to get to know him, a lot of fun really kind of find out kind of who he is and where he's from. It's been great. Love that conversation. So now let's turn our attention to what's going on this week in Pearl. And this time I'm actually reading it for the first time with you guys. So let me look at it right here. All right. So football and cheer. City League football and cheer registration is going on right now. Registrations until the June 30th. So you got a week left to get your kid registered for football and for cheer. Visit pearlparksandrec.com. That's pearlparksandrec.com and click on register. Spots are filling up quick, very limited. So if you want to get your child registered for football or cheer, then go there today and get that done. If you need some help with it or just have some questions, you can always reach out to the office at Pearl Parks and Rec by calling 601-932-3541. Okay, the Kiwanis Club of Pearl is hosting its annual golf tournament Friday, June 27th. So that's just like right around the corner. A few TikToks and a sleep or two, and it'll be right here. So Friday, June 27th. You don't have much time to proceeds help support the local programs that the Kiwanis Club are always involved in. For more information about supporting that, you may visit the City of Pearl Government Facebook page or call Pearl Parks and Recreation at 601-932-3541. Okay, also on June 27th, it is the finale Friday. Main Street Pearl presents Midtown Sunset Series ending this Friday. It's going to be Waking Mars. Waking Mars is the name of the group. They perform at 7 City Hall Green Space, which is right behind this building. Can't miss it. If you come down to City Hall and you drive around, you'll see big white tents, a stage, the trailers sitting out there. You can't miss it. That's where it's going to happen. This Friday night, June 27th, last one, Waking Mars. They are a 3-piece rock, rap, and nu metal band. Concessions are available and will be served. So definitely come out one last time for the finale Friday to Waking Mars. It's going to be a good time. And last but not least, the Mississippi Mud Monsters are in the middle of their baseball season, and do check them out. You can go to mudmonstersbaseball.com and get your tickets or you can just go by the ticket office and grab a couple. It's very inexpensive, wonderful baseball, great to see the park, and you can catch Friday night fireworks. Anyway, I've enjoyed today. It's been a fantastic conversation. Again, we want to appreciate the Speaker White for coming and visiting with us, and for Representative Newman bringing him in. Anyway, y'all have a great week, and until next time, I'll see you then.